Hey everybody, Mike Wood here with ViperSharp again. I just wanted to go through a few details here and basically want to talk about the idea of matching an existing angle versus reprofiling, especially when you get a factory edge. So stick around and let's look at those edges and see what it takes to make them work. Well, thanks for sticking with me. Let's jump into this. What I've been thinking about here is, as I've talked to a lot of people about sharpening their knives and getting the edge that they want, specifically matching edge, I've had questions about matching the angle. Basically, what we've got to do is decide when we have a new knife, do we want to match the existing angle that comes from the factory, or do we want to reprofile it and give it our own angle? And that's a decision you have to make. Now, of course, if we are going to reprofile either one side of the knife or both sides to a certain angle that we desire, instead of matching the angle that's there, then we're going to have to work a lot longer. We're going to have to work harder that first time to take off that extra metal and get it to where we want it to be. So why would you want to reprofile a blade? Honestly, bottom line, in my opinion, in my book, if the blade cuts, that's what it's meant to do. That's what we want, right? As long as we've got it sharp, to me, that's all that matters. However, what I've found is factory edges are not perfect. They're not the exact same angle on both sides. And not only are they not the same angle on both sides, there will be a slight difference there, but there are also going to be imperfections along the edge. Typically, you'll see an imperfection down here at the heel of the blade where it's a totally different angle than the rest of the blade. Same thing up here at the tip. Those are the two primary areas where you're going to see that. And that's because somebody in the factory is doing it by hand on a grinder, and they're going like this to make the angle. And so they're just a little imperfect when they get to this end of the blade or this end of the blade, and they're making a human error, which is to be expected. So typically when I have a brand new knife, I'm going to get rid of those flaws and errors there. So let's jump into this and show you a little bit of how to match that existing factory edge, or if you decide to go the other route and reprofile. All right, the first thing we've got to think about here is knife placement. What we want to do is have match the front of the clamp with an imaginary line between the heel of the blade and the tip of the blade. So that's going to give you the most consistent angle from one end of the blade to the other. So we'll set that and tighten that down. So there we should have the most consistent angle. Now what we want to do is put a little Sharpie on this. And this actually, I believe, is the factory edge on this knife. Alright. And slide it in. So now we've got our expected angle, our desired angle. We'll start with a 1200 grit stone, and we want to lock that in place where it's not going to cause any damage on the front end of the blade, on the edge there. So I'm going to lock that in so that I'm using as much of that stone as possible, or more or less I'm using a large amount of that stone. Then I'm going to decide my angle, and the angle is adjusted by that right there. Loosen that thumb screw, and that'll go up and down, and we can decide where that angle should be. And each of these marks on the back of that adjustment rod are 1 degree. So if we're between the 5, somewhere between 5 and 7 marks, there is about 20-22 degrees range, which is generally where I like to sharpen with most of my knives. So now what we're looking for is to remove that marker, and we're looking to see if it removes from the entire edge. And I'm going to check both sides here, and I'm going to see which is closest, and then what I'm going to do is whichever side I'm closest on, if I want to just match the angle, the existing angle, then that's what I'm going to go with, and the other side will come in line with it. So let's see if I can get a little closer on that and show you. In fact, we'll bring it up right here. So you can see the marker has come away all the way to the edge right here, but not out there. Not along this front side of the blade yet. So we want to go out there and see, yep, that looks good. We continue on out. And it's very close. We're pretty much there on that entire blade. And we are seeing a little bit of what I spoke about, and I don't know how well you can see it there, but a little darkness back on the edge here and a bit on that tip there, which are the two areas where the angle is going to vary. And so what I'm going to do is I'll go down to a 250 grit, my lower grit on the diamond set, and I'm going to work to remove that metal. I'm going to go get some oil, because we want to put oil on this typically. Now the oil you want to use with the diamond stones, but not with your ceramic stones. And typically what I do is I'll just put a small amount of oil on there, just get a rag, and use that to clean my stone out. I'll clean that fish hook groove out a little bit. And basically I want to take all the metal shavings off, as much as I can anyway. Get the majority of those metal shavings off. So, and then what's left, the oil that's on there, is what I'm going to use for a little bit of lubrication. And then I'm just going to work until I can remove the metal to the point where I've got a consistent angle from the back, the heel of the blade, all the way to the front. Back and forth movement, creating that burr. I am not putting downward pressure. There should be no downward pressure on the knife. If you're pushing down on the knife, you're going to push that edge away from the stone, and you're not going to get to the edge. And that's probably an issue that many are having. This should literally be just the weight of the stone doing the work here. Your hands, your fingers are just guiding that stone, and let the stone do the cutting. Do not put pressure down on the blade. Anytime you put pressure down on the blade in a clamping guided system, pressure against the blade is going to push the edge away from your stone. And so then you're not sharpening, all you're doing is working on the shoulder of your knife, and that's not going to do you any good. So we'll just finish up getting that tip there, and then I'll see if I can give you a demonstration of finding the burr so we know we've gotten to the other side of the edge. Now let's look close at this. I want to point out another tip that I think is valuable. So you can see right there at the very tip of the blade, see that black marker that's still there. Okay, and that comes because of how it was shaped in the factory. But what I found is if you match that angle out here at the tip and work until you get rid of that marker right there, which I now have done with just moving up 1 degree, and then make that your edge, then you're going to have a lot faster sharpening time on that blade. So if that's your concern, if you want to just get the blade sharp, then that might be the best way to do it. Is let's match the angle out here at the tip, and that's usually, in my experience with most of the knives, that's usually going to be the best angle to get quickly to the edge. And then the rest of this is just back and forth until we create that burr on the other side. And I typically like to hold back here on the back of the sharpener when I'm doing aggressive work like this for reprofiling, taking off a lot of metal. And then once I get to where I'm just cleanup strokes, that's where I like to go to this. And I like to keep that ball loose, don't tighten it down. Keep it nice and loose so that it moves, it sticks with your hand, and the stone can move freely. And then another tip, I'll say it again, I've said it many times, but you want to use as much of the stone as possible, so we're going up and forward. So your strokes are like that. Okay. So we're using as much of the stone as we can, but we're also going along the entire length of the blade. Okay, you do not want side-to-side movement like this. This isn't the proper way to sharpen. And of course, we're not going to go just in one part of the blade. We've got to give a cross movement and a forward movement, or back and forth. But again, using as much of that stone as you can. Another quick tip to remember as you're sharpening, we don't want to round out that tip. We want to leave that pointed. So we want to go over the edge of the tip, but we don't want to roll it back over here. We don't need to use the whole width of that stone or steel, as it were, when we're sharpening. So when you're going like this, you want to come out so that the tip disappears, so we know the stone is covering it, but not so much that the stone is falling off and going over here. That's going to roll your tip, round your tip out. So don't round it, but make sure that we are getting all the way to the tip. All right, so now I've created a burr on most of the blade, and let's see if I can get you to hear that. See, that scraping is the burr. Back here on the very heel of the blade we've got it, but not right there, which is fairly typical of a new blade. And we've got it all the way along to the front of the blade, and sometimes you can see it. I don't have a microscopic camera, unfortunately, but sometimes you can see it picking up a little bit of bits of paper towel or something if you're using something like that. But so we'll work a little bit more on that back, and once I've got the burr completed, then I'll turn it over and do the other side. All right, now here's a real quick way to tell when you've got the burr as well. Now obviously you can feel it. You can feel it, you can hear it with your finger, but when you flip this over to go to the other side, actually let me show you this side first. So this is the side we've been working on. We're going to take one forward stroke, so listen to this sound. Okay, so you've got a nice, clean, smooth sound. It's just skating across the edge there. Okay, now we turn it over. I'm going to take just a forward motion this way on the blade, and listen to the sound of the edge here. Okay, you can hear and feel, you can feel it grabbing that burr. Okay, so now that we know we've got the burr on that side, we've come all the way to the edge on that one side. Now we've got to do the same thing on this side. So we've got to get rid of that burr. And I have added a little extra oil. Don't know if you noticed that, but I added a little extra oil to help take away the shavings, so I don't have to come in and clean it up as often during my sharpening. So you can actually hear the difference in the sharpening, and you can really feel the difference. So now I can feel that I've gotten that burr off all the way. So now it's not grabbing, it's skating across the edge. Now I've got to create a burr on this side, on the underside here, to make sure I'm going to the edge, and that was quick actually. I've got the burr there all the way along. Now I do notice a little bit of that tip marker that I was talking about before, so let's see if I can show you. The marker right at the end there, where I've taken it off at the very edge, at the apex. I've taken it off up at the shoulder, but you've got a little bit in the middle that's still there. That's because of the factory grind job. So if you want to make that edge the same, make it a nice straight flat edge all the way along. That's one of the benefits of the ViperSharp. It's going to give you that consistent angle from one end of your edge to the other. And so you just work on it until you get that divot out of there, and you've got a good consistent angle all the way along your edge. And you can feel and hear that catching from the burr. And that actually does show up there. Let's see if I can get in close on that. So just look at it, how it's picking up the paper there on that. You can see all these little shavings of the paper napkin. And that's because we've got a burr on the other side. As we go this way, no burr, it doesn't capture the paper. So now we've got our edge. We know that we have a good sharp edge on both sides. Now all we have to do is clean it up with some final strokes. And here's that burr coming off. So this is still with the 250. And you might notice I do not use the lock screw on that receiving rail for the clamp. I put that in as a request for those of you who like that, but I never use it. I don't like it. There's no need for it. All pressure, which should be very minimal from the stone only, is downward, so there's no sloppy movement that you don't need to worry about. All right, so we got rid of our burr on that side. This side should be good already. We'll give it a few strokes there. And now all we have to do is move up. I'm going to go ahead and go through every level. So this is the 1400 stone. And we'll clean it first. It does have a bit of shavings on there from previous work. And then I'm going to put a little bit more on there. More oil. Give it 5 strokes on that side. Five strokes or so on that side. And we can jump up to the 600. Also haven't oiled this one since last use, so we'll go ahead and put some oil on there. Do a little bit more with the finer stones. And really all we're doing now is refining that edge. We'll set aside the 600, put on our 1200. We're not doing any more reprofiling or work here. We're just refining, cleaning up that edge now. Now I'll get a piece of paper and test this. And this is one of the beauties of the ViperSharp. You can actually pull the knife out of the system to test it. Do some cut tests without losing your angle. So if I want to go in and strop this or mirror the edge with some lapping film or anything like that, I can first test it. Make sure that it's cutting smooth all the way along the entire length of the blade. Drying out my marker there. Put it right back in and you haven't lost your angle. Now we're going to use a lapping film that I've used a few times. This is 5 micron. I'm going to go ahead and basically just looking for some oil to clean that. And then we'll put the micron lapping film on there. So this is 5 microns. And let's see, I don't know if we can get that to where you can really see that. I need to I need to have my angle. Let's see if we can adjust this here. Now with the lapping film, we're only going to pull this direction. And this is just going to really refine that edge. And it doesn't take long to actually get a mirror polish on the edge there. And you can kind of see that happening with the reflection of the lapping plate. Pull that over. Again, cover the tip. Try and go from the tip of the blade all the way to the heel, front to back with that in one stroke. And that'll get you that nice mirror polish on the edge. And that is not diamond lapping film, that's just silicon carbide film. Diamond might last a little longer, go a little farther, but there you are. Now we can go ahead and take that out, and we've got a new edge again. So, from a factory edge to a perfected edge with the ViperSharp. This knife, if you like it, is from Civivi. That's a We Knives budget line. I'll put a link to that in the description, so if you want to pick one up, you can go get one. They're not a real expensive knife, comparatively so. And this blade is VG10 steel. Not quite S30V, which I really enjoy, but a decent steel nonetheless. So thank you all for sticking with me here through this video to check out how to work on a factory edge with the ViperSharp. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. If there's something you'd like to see with the ViperSharp or questions you have, post them in the comments. Give us a like, a thumbs up, and I look forward to sharing another video with you soon.